Hello dear students, hope you are all doing well. This is a new lecture on strategic human resource management, and as you can see, the title of this lecture is Human Side of Mergers and Acquisitions, and I am Dr. Tripti Barthwal. I am Director, Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute of Management and Development Studies, Lucknow. So, in the last lecture we have talked about mergers and acquisitions. What is the process that underlines a merger or acquisition. Now, in that lecture itself, I emphasized on the key role which people and the HR department play in a merger or acquisition. So, in today's lecture, we will talk about it in detail. So, we have discussed already this three-stage process of pre-combination, combination and solidification and assessment of new entity. So, the outdated view of HR as a purely administrative function rather than as a strategic one often results in HR professionals being excluded from many aspects of the merger and acquisition process in which they could add significant value to the process. So, generally it is considered that the merger and acquisition is a top management job, which it is, and the traditional view is that HR has nothing to do with it, because HR the normal operative functions of HR like recruitment, training and development, compensation, etc., they have no place in a merger or acquisition. But what happens is that as we are moving ahead, we are realizing that when HR is excluded from the process of merger and acquisition, then that value which it can add, it is lost, right. So, HR can actually add a significant value into the entire process of mergers and acquisitions. HR plays a pivotal role during the whole merger and acquisition deal. HR department helps bring the integration between the two companies go smoothly. According to Strategic Human Resource Management, a survey was conducted, and as high as 70 to 90% of all mergers and acquisitions fail in a financial sense, with most companies missing their objectives. So, what is the people issues which are to be blamed in the failure of mergers and acquisitions? These include incompatible cultures, wherein you have merged, two companies have come together just on the basis of the financial picture. So, the financial picture was looking very positive, very upbeat and rosy. So, the companies thought that they can improve their status much further if they come together, but they did not take into consideration how opposite, how diametrically contradictory their cultures are with each other. Then management styles, if for example, a Japanese company merges with an American company, their management styles, their leadership styles are totally different from each other. So, that also can lead to the failure of a merger or acquisition. Loss of key talent. So, when a merger or acquisition takes place, there is lot of insecurity in the employees because of lot of uncertainty. Maybe the organization has failed to communicate many things which it should communicate. It is not that transparent, the entire process, which it should be. So, people are fearing for their jobs. So, many good employees, they move on to other companies. Then as a result of uncertainty, insecurity, there is poor motivation. And as I said, there is lack of transparency in if all these problems arise actually because of poor level of communication. Then obviously, when there is no communication, there is not any trust between the management and the employees, and of course, uncertainty. So, these are the actually those very obvious problems which are there when a merger and acquisition takes place, and these are all related to the human resources of the organization. None of these problems are related to the marketing or to the production or to finance. They are not related to any other aspect, but related to the people working in the organization. Now, what are the common mistakes made in a merger or acquisition? First is not getting HR involved early enough. As I said, the traditional view is that HR does not have a role to play in a merger and acquisition, because HR does not have a role to play in the strategy of the organization. But now, because we have realized that HR has a very important role to play in the strategic attainment of strategic objectives of the organization, and that is why we are studying this entire subject of strategic human resource management. So, it is very important and imperative that HR should be involved right from the very beginning. Not working with both the acquiring company and the selling company. So, for example, if we have involved HR of the acquirer company, but we have not involved the HR of the target company, because we feel that, you know, why should we involve the HR of the target company, because we are the ones which we are acquiring the company. So, the company has to work, the employees have to work according to our requirements. No, that would be a wrong approach. The HR of both the companies, because both the companies HR understand their employees, their requirements, how they operate in their own ways. So, we can't only trust the HR of the acquiring company. Not understanding the functions of the leadership teams during the process. So, how important is the role of a leader to dispel all the doubts and myths and uncertainties regarding the merger and acquisition. We should understand that the leader has to continuously communicate with the employees, so as to make them feel secure and involved in the process of merger and acquisition. Not understanding the needs of the employees of both the companies. So, the employees want information, the employees want transparency, which we have ignored, and as a result of that, this is very big mistake which we can commit in a merger or acquisition. The first question every employee will have is, how will this affect me? And that is the primary reason of uncertainty, that is the primary reason of poor motivation. Once this answer is clear to the employee, then he will be happy, because actually the company is going for an expansion strategy. You know that the merger and acquisition is a cooperative strategy, which is actually an expansion strategy. So, every employee would want that their organization grows and progresses and expands. So, expansion strategy or growth strategy, right. So, but how is it going to affect me? So, first the person will be concerned about himself or the impact of the merger and acquisition on his own professional life, personal life, and then second thing will be about the company. So, HR needs to address that question as soon as possible. If the employees do not have an understanding of what is expected of them, morale will plummet. So, you do not want that to happen, because you are doing a merger or acquisition actually for moving ahead. You do not want anything to come down, you do not want the profitability of the company to come down, you do not want the morale of the employees to come down. But this way it is going to come down if the employees are not properly communicated, that after a merger and acquisition also their positions will be sound, strong, safe, and they are not also clarified that what is their role in this entire merger and acquisition. So, role of HR before merger and acquisition takes place. So, that is the pre-combination, before the merger and acquisition takes place, that is during the pre-combination process. What is the role of HR? So, HR professionals typically play pivotal roles in an merger and acquisition's core due diligence activity. So, we have already discussed in the earlier lecture what due diligence is, and there we are looking at not only the financial aspects of the company, the assets and liabilities, we are also looking at the employee capabilities, the market share, etc., whether we have made the right estimates, assumptions about the target company or not. So, here the role of HR in due diligence is very, very important. During due diligence, information about talent and culture along with typical assessments of employees' benefit plans, liabilities, compensation programs, employment contracts and policies, legal exposure and more can provide insights into the value of a company and its workforce, and can decrease the likelihood of unhappy and expensive surprises once the deal is complete. So, we have looked at the assets and liabilities, market share, but what about how the target company deals with its employees, what kind of employee contracts they have, and what is the cost of compensation which they incur or their employees, what kind of benefits they give to their employees, what are the legal protection which their employees have. This all has to also be studied in detail by the company, because otherwise later on when these things are ignored in the initial stage and the deal is worked out very hurriedly, then later on these can spring up as a very unpleasant surprise, as a shock for the acquirer company, and then things are not that tasteful, right. This is a time when all people related policies, plans, practices and programs should be scrutinized to ensure compliance with applicable employment laws and regulations. So, this also has to be seen, especially if the target company and the acquirer company come from two different countries, then this all legal aspects related to employees also have to be studied in detail, and how the merger or acquisition is going to change those legal the legal implications of all the HR or the employee related laws. Having the necessary skill sets to effectively manage the integration, example the knowledge in employee relations, communications, change management and legal requirements enables HR professionals to handle the complicated process of managing human resources during mergers and acquisitions. So, if the HR is involved initially from the very start, and if the HR has those kind of skills, a good knowledge of human relations, communications, change management, legal requirements, so very easily human resource department, human resource managers can handle people during the merger and acquisition process. The HR with top management teams will have been able to assess the skills, capabilities and motivations of key employees, and then the HR team should take immediate steps to re-recruit and place these employees into key positions of the new entities. Now, when you go for a merger and acquisition, one of the purposes is you want to multiply capabilities, and if good employees of both the organizations quit the organization immediately before or after the merger or acquisition takes place, then the value itself goes down. Even if you do not evaluate the value of the entity, new entity, it is very, very obvious that it has gone down in terms of the human resource and the human asset. So, that is why it is very important that HR should be involved initially itself, and HR should have a very, very active role to play in a merger or an acquisition. And as we have said that we have to take care about the assessment of the skills, capabilities, potential and motivations of key employees who are very important to the new entity, whether irrespective of whether from which organization they are coming, whether the target company or the acquirer company, but they have to be ensured that they do not leave our organization. And then we have to re-recruit them. They are already on the payroll of either of the two companies, but in the new entity we have to again recruit them, make a suitable position for them, and so that these employees are retained with us. Now, the key issues in mergers and acquisitions which in terms of HR we have to take care of are: first is employee communication, because as we said that lack of transparency, lack of communication, proper and timely and clear communication can lead to a lot of doubts and insecurity in the minds of employees. So, it includes management of external and internal information, including the human resource information system. During the transition period after the deal is completed, staff are inevitably going to be vulnerable and nervous. That is very, very natural human response to any change, and this is a big change which is occurring in their organization, in their life. So, to expect that the employees will be very, very okay and positive and upbeat about it, that is that is not going to happen. So, that is why the role of the top management and HR department becomes very important here, so as to make the employees secure. They will look for signals about if their role is going to change or even exist at all. So, employees may fear that whether their job will remain now with the new entity, or their position will be demoted or something, they will be transferred or something else will happen, their terms and conditions of employment will change or not. So, they will look for signals, so even if you do not talk to them, then whatever rumors they will listen, whatever body languages assessment they will make, they will get their own picture, they will draw their own picture out of that, which is going to be very fatal, because if they draw a negative picture out of it, then they will, even before you realize it, they will quit the organization. Employees' questions and concerns should be addressed. Goals of the merger and acquisition, the vision for the future should be shared as soon as possible to alleviate the stress of not knowing for the employees. So, if you want the employees not to go through that stress of not knowing or lack of information, then you should provide them as much information as early as possible. HR needs to remain open to their communication of change and create trust within the transitional process. So, when there is this transition taking place, the entire merger and acquisition taking place, then there should be open communication. Second is talent management. HR must ensure that the best talent from each company is not lost due to lack of communication or compensation level regarding these key employees. So, as I said, that your capabilities, your value will come down if good employees leave the organization. Now, each merger and acquisition is different. In some cases, there will be no changes to personnel. In others, changes could be drastic to the extent of downsizing. So, we can't have one size fits all. Every merger and acquisition will be done for different purposes, and hence its methodology will be different. So, one has to be prepared for that. In some cases there will be status quo, in some cases there will be just a total drastic change, a revolution taking place. It usually leads to restructuring within the company. So, there will be at least some changes in the company. There may be restructuring, there may be cutting of jobs, there may be downsizing. The main challenge is optimizing this restructuring so that the key players remain with the company, still enjoying the host of benefits and processes they were used to experiencing. So, in case if you have to downsize, then you have to weed out, you have to keep the useful assets with you, and even if certain assets which are not useful, human resource assets which are not so useful, you can do away with them. You can just afford to lose them also in this entire process if their downsizing is imminent. It is also about ensuring job security, otherwise you cannot retain your key talent. Then the third issue, very important in merger and acquisition, is that employees fear that what will happen to their compensation package. They have been used to working with company A for such a long time, and they have this kind of a compensation package which is quite attractive. What will happen to their compensation package in the new entity? One of the main challenges HR faces during the merger and acquisition process is maintaining employee benefits. This includes a number of different facets such as health insurance, annual leave, pension allowances, childcare subsidies, retention bonus, severance allowance, and all employees will feel that whether these benefits will be sustained, they will be maintained by or continued by the new entity or not. So, the cost of these practices should be included in the due diligence phase and financial evaluation. So, only profit and losses should not be seen. This is very important. That is why the role of HR starts from the very start, because the cost of all these benefits should be included in the due diligence process, because earlier we discussed that there should not be any shocks, any unpleasant surprises for the new entity. Another key consideration due to the cost of living differences is the location of the merging company and where the company will be in the future. So, as we discussed that the one company may be in one country, the other may be in other country or maybe in other city. So, the cost of living will be different in different areas. So, that also has to be taken into consideration when talking about the compensation package in the new entity. Then obviously, we have discussed one of the major people issues which kind of affect a merger or acquisition and many times leads to its failure is the integration of the cultures of the companies. So, even if the companies are coming from the same country, they have their own organizational culture. Organizational culture is a topic which you must be aware about, you must have been studying it in your organizational behavior paper or managing organizations paper. And if there is incompatibility of culture, then also problems can arise, and you can work on the compensation package, you can work on the lack of communication, but it is very difficult to integrate employees coming from two different cultures. So, if the acquirer organization's culture has to prevail, then the target company employees have a problem, right? The acquirer employees may not have a problem. So, one of the trickiest parts of negotiating and merger and acquisition situation is bringing the two companies together, transforming from we and them to us, right. So, wo hum or hum saath mein hai, right. So, that is very difficult, is one of the biggest post mergers challenges, right. Just assuming the two or more cultures will merge seamlessly can be a crucial error. Because to assume, oh, they are employees, we will give them good packages, we will give them a good environment to work, and when they will see that this merger and acquisition is going to get great results, it is going to be so successful in the future, employees will not have any problem. This is just a presumption which the company should not have, because this can create a havoc in the future of the merger and acquisition. And this can we have just assuming that the two or more cultures will merge seamlessly can be a crucial error and one that could derail the process. It can bring the entire process to a halt, it can just topple everything around. So, it can have very severe negative implications if we assume such things. Now, during the initial evaluation of a potential reorganization, HR helps determine whether the existing culture is compatible with that of a new or resulting company. So, here also again, this is again where the role of HR is very important, because if we do not involve the HR from the very start, then what will happen? The companies will come together on the basis of the financials, but later the merger or acquisition is going to fail because the employees failed to integrate. The cultures could not be integrated, they were too incompatible with each other. So, that is why the role of HR should start from the very start of the merger and acquisition process. So, as I said that you can go work on communication, you can work on the compensation package, but if you do not involve HR from the very start, then due diligence, you can get a wrong picture through due diligence and later there can be lot of problems. And throughout the transition process, the HR specialist is often the point person in transitioning employees between cultures. So, who will carry out this process? That is why we are discussing the human side of mergers and acquisitions, and we are discussing the important role the HR manager plays in the entire process, because the HR managers of both the companies, they understand their employees so well, they understand their needs, they understand their insecurities so well that those will be the key persons who will handhold their company's employees, who will dispel their doubts, and who will bring together the employees of the two companies to work synergistically as team members. So, the merger and acquisition will not only be successful in the terms of HR, strategic HR, but it will also be successful in financial terms, in the sense of delivering profits and market share. So, a good example in point is for how eBay bought PayPal back in 2002. And what did eBay do? eBay did not extinguish PayPal and roll it under the eBay brand, because it realized that maybe the cultures are too incompatible, that it will create a problem. So, having the best of both the worlds, it kind of did not allowed eBay and PayPal both to work as two different entities, though there was a merger. So, instead PayPal became a subsidiary under eBay, making it technically the same business overall, while still having very much of its own corporate culture, departments, etc. So, as a result of this kind of intervention by eBay, it could derive the best of both worlds. It could derive the financial advantage of acquiring PayPal, but still it could do away with the problems that might have they could have anticipated in the future, and they could have brought about the downfall of the merger and acquisition. So, the PayPal was allowed to maintain its own entity, eBay maintained its own entity, and there was an overall culture, but still they functioned as two different entities. And this is how this was possible only when HR was involved in from the very start. It was realized through due diligence that the cultures won't match so well, they won't be compatible. So, they were very sure and they did not make a mistake. So, this is how these are the key HR issues in a merger or acquisition, and in the next lecture we will be talking about further in detail how HR issues plays an important role in mergers and acquisitions, and how many mergers and acquisitions have failed just because organizations have failed to either anticipate the problems or related to HR in the future, or they have not worked properly on those problems. So, thank you very much.